My mother-in-law stood up in front of 60 women and said, "That baby isn't my son's. She trapped him." The room went cold. My husband wouldn't look at me. Then my phone rang. It was Dr. Ambrose from the prenatal clinic. She said, "I have the paternity results you both requested. May I read them now?" I put her on speaker, and every woman in that room heard the truth. Before I tell you what that doctor said on speaker, take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel and tell me your country in the comments. Now, let's begin. My name is Tamsin Ortega. I am 28 years old and 7 months pregnant on the day the woman who was supposed to become my baby's grandmother tried to destroy my entire life in front of everyone I loved. I need to take you back to the beginning so you understand how I ended up standing in a decorated living room in Burlington, Vermont, with 60 women staring at me and a phone on speaker that was about to change everything. I met Corbin Ainsley at a fermentation workshop in Stowe. That sounds strange, I know, but I'm a food scientist. Specifically, I work in microbial fermentation and flavor development at a small biotech company called TerraFlora Labs, based just outside Burlington. We develop probiotic cultures for artisanal food producers, cheesemakers, sourdough bakers, kombucha brewers. It's niche, quiet work, the kind of job where you spend hours watching bacterial colonies under a microscope and get excited when a lactobacillus strain produces a new flavor compound. Not exactly the kind of career that impresses people at dinner parties. Corbin was there because his family owned Ainsley Dairy, one of the oldest small-batch creameries in Vermont. 3 generations. His grandfather started it in 1961 with 12 cows and a barn that leaned slightly to the left. Corbin ran the operations side now, managing distribution to farm-to-table restaurants across New England. He was kind, steady. The type of man who remembered your coffee order after hearing it once and never made you feel small for caring about things other people found boring. We talked for 4 hours that first day. About fermentation, about bacterial cultures, about the way a perfectly aged cheddar smells like hay and butter, and something almost sweet underneath. He laughed when I explained the chemistry of why sourdough rises. Not at me. With me. And that difference, small as it sounds, was everything. We dated for a year. Quiet, easy, real. Weekend drives through the Green Mountains. Sunday mornings at Penny Cluse Cafe on Cherry Street. He brought me raw milk samples from the dairy, and I'd culture them in my lab, sending back tasting notes like they were fine wine. It was our strange little language, and it worked. Then he proposed. On the shore of Lake Champlain, during a sunset so orange it looked artificial, I said yes before he finished asking. And that's when I met Genevieve. Genevieve Ainsley, his mother, and the woman who decided, from the moment she first looked at me, that I was not enough. Now, here's where I need to be honest about something, because this story doesn't work if I pretend I'm perfect. I made a mistake early on. When Corbin first brought me home to meet his family, Genevieve asked what I did for a living. I was nervous. Her house was immaculate. White furniture, crystal glasses, a kitchen that looked like it had never been cooked in. She was wearing a silk blouse and pearl earrings, and she looked at me the way people look at a stain on a tablecloth. So when she asked, I panicked. And instead of explaining my actual work, the biotech company, the research, the patents, I just said, I work in a lab testing food samples. Which wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. It made me sound like a quality control technician making $19 an hour, not a senior research scientist with 2 patents in probiotic strain development and a contract with the USDA. That was my fault. I made myself smaller because I was afraid of her. And Genevieve took that smallness and built an entire narrative around it. A lab worker, she told her sister Paulette. He's marrying a lab worker. She said it the way someone might say, he's marrying a parking meter. Paulette nodded sympathetically, like someone had died. But here's what I learned about Genevieve over the next year. Her cruelty wasn't random. It came from somewhere real. Before Corbin's father built the dairy into what it is now, the Ainsleys were broke. Genuinely broke. Genevieve grew up in a trailer in Winooski, married into the family when the dairy was still struggling, and spent 30 years clawing her way into respectability. She joined the Burlington Garden Club. She chaired the Shelburne Farms fundraiser 3 years in a row. She built an identity around being the matriarch of a legacy family. And anything that threatened that identity, anything that reminded her of where she came from, triggered something deep and defensive in her. I was that trigger. Not because of who I was, but because of who she was afraid I looked like. Someone from before. Someone who didn't fit the picture she had spent decades painting. Understanding that didn't make it hurt less, but it made me stay quiet longer than I should have. The comments started small. "Tamsin, sweetie, that dress is very brave." Or, "I'm sure your little lab job keeps you busy." She never raised her voice. She never had to. The cruelty was in the precision. Small cuts, placed perfectly, always in front of someone. Corbin noticed. At first, he pushed back gently. "Mom, that's not fair." But Genevieve had a way of turning his defense of me into an attack on her. "I'm just worried about you, Corbin. A mother has a right to worry." And slowly, like water wearing down stone, he stopped pushing back. He didn't join in, but he stopped standing in front of me. And when someone stops standing in front of you, you feel the wind. Then I got pregnant. You would think that would change things. And for a few weeks it did. Genevieve smiled more. She bought a tiny knit blanket. She even hugged me once, stiffly, briefly, like she was handling something fragile and slightly unclean. But I took it. I wanted so badly for this baby to be the thing that fixed everything. But 3 months in, something shifted. Genevieve started asking questions. Odd questions. "When exactly did you get pregnant? And were you seeing anyone before Corbin, and the one that made my stomach drop? Has Corbin asked for a test?" A test. She meant a paternity test. She was planting seeds, and I could feel them taking root in places I couldn't reach. Corbin came home one night and sat on the edge of the bed without looking at me. "My mom thinks," he started, then stopped. "She thinks maybe we should get a paternity test, just to, put it to rest." I stared at him. 7 months of growing a human being inside my body. 7 months of morning sickness and swollen ankles and falling asleep at my desk because the exhaustion hit like a wall. And this man, the man who proposed to me by a lake, was sitting on our bed asking me to prove our baby was his. I could have fought. I could have screamed. But I didn't. Because here's the thing about people who know the truth. They're not afraid of proof. "Fine," I said. "Schedule it." He looked surprised, almost disappointed, like he expected a fight, and my calm unsettled him. We went to Dr. Ambrose at the Green Mountain Prenatal Clinic the following week. She explained the non-invasive prenatal paternity test. A simple blood draw from me, a cheek swab from Corbin. Results in 5 to 7 business days. What Corbin didn't know was that Dr. Ambrose and I had a history. Not personal, professional. 2 years before I met Corbin, TerraFlora Labs had partnered with her clinic on a research study involving prenatal microbiome development. I had spent 4 months working in her facility analyzing gut bacteria in newborns. She knew exactly who I was, what I did, and what I was worth, professionally and otherwise. She never said a word about it. But when she drew my blood that day, she looked at me over her glasses and said very quietly, "The truth always surfaces, Tamsin. Always." I held on to that. The baby shower was Genevieve's idea. That should have been my first warning. She organized everything. The venue, her own home, the guest list, 60 women, most of whom were her friends from the garden club and the Shelburne fundraiser circuit, the decorations, white and gold, expensive, cold. She even chose my outfit, a cream-colored dress she had sent to the house in a box with a note. "Wear this. It photographs well." I wore it. I know. I shouldn't have, but I was 7 months pregnant, exhausted, and still foolishly hoping that this shower was a peace offering, that maybe Genevieve had organized it because she was finally accepting me. The house looked beautiful, white flowers everywhere, a 3-tier cake, a table of gifts wrapped in silk ribbon, women in cashmere and linen filling the living room, holding champagne flutes and speaking in that careful, curated way that wealthy Vermont women speak. Warm on the surface, measuring everything underneath. Corbin was there too, which was unusual for a baby shower, but Genevieve had insisted. "Family should be together for this," she said. He stood near the kitchen, quiet, looking at his phone. He hadn't been the same since the test. Distant, like he was waiting for something. The shower went smoothly for the first hour. Gifts were opened. Someone made a toast. A woman I didn't know told me I was glowing, which is what people say to pregnant women when they can't think of anything else. And then Genevieve stood up. She clinked her glass. The room quieted. "Thank you all for being here," she said, smiling. "This is such a special day for our family." She paused, looked at me, and the smile didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. "But I think before we celebrate," she continued, "there's something that needs to be said, because honesty matters in a family, and I have always believed in honesty." My heart started beating faster. I set my glass down. "I love my son," she said, "and I will always protect him, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable." She turned to face me fully now. "Tamsin, I've had concerns about this pregnancy from the beginning, concerns I've shared privately. But today, in front of the women who matter most to this family, I need to say what everyone has been thinking." She paused. The room was dead silent. "That baby," she said, looking at my stomach, "is not my son's child." Gasps. Whispers. Someone set their glass down too hard and it cracked against the table. I looked at Corbin. He was standing by the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, staring at the floor. He wouldn't look at me. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just Genevieve. This was planned. He knew. Maybe not every word, but he knew something was coming, and he let it happen. "She trapped him," Genevieve continued, her voice steady and rehearsed. "A woman with no family name, no connections, no real career. She saw an opportunity, and she took it. And my son, because he is kind and trusting, believed her. A few women nodded. Not all of them, but enough. Paulette, Genevieve's sister, was already shaking her head at me with that performative disappointment that some people practice in mirrors. But one woman, Corbin's cousin Lucinda, sitting near the window, didn't nod. She didn't shake her head. She just watched, quietly, taking it all in. I remember because she was the only person in that room whose face showed something other than judgment. It showed doubt. Not doubt in me, doubt in what was happening. I didn't speak. I stood there, one hand on my stomach, breathing slowly. Not because I was broken, because I was waiting. And then my phone rang. The sound cut through the room like a crack in glass. I looked at the screen. Dr. Ambrose, Green Mountain Prenatal Clinic. Genevieve laughed. "Go ahead," she said. "Answer it. Nothing can save you now." I answered. "Dr. Ambrose, Tamsin, hello. I have the paternity results from last week's test. Both you and Corbin requested to be notified as soon as they were ready. Are you able to hear them now?" I looked at Genevieve, then at Corbin, then at the 60 women sitting in that pristine white living room, holding their champagne and their assumptions. "Yes," I said. "And actually, could you say it loud enough for the room? I'd like everyone to hear." I pressed speaker. A pause. Then Dr. Ambrose's voice, clear, clinical, unhurried. "The prenatal paternity test confirms, with 99.9998% probability, that Corbin James Ainsley is the biological father of the child." Silence. Not the polite kind. The kind that sounds like a room full of people suddenly realizing they're standing on the wrong side of something they can't undo. Genevieve's face didn't just fall, it collapsed, layer by layer, like plaster coming off a wall. The confidence, the performance, the carefully built composure, all of it crumbled in front of 60 witnesses. "That can't be right," she whispered. "The results are definitive, ma'am," Dr. Ambrose replied, still on speaker. "I'm also noting for the record that Miss Ortega's prenatal health profile is exemplary. She's been one of our most diligent patients. In fact," a brief pause. "For what it's worth, she was also one of the lead researchers on our clinic's microbiome study 2 years ago. She's a senior scientist at TerraFlora Labs. I believe she holds 2 patents in probiotic strain development. I only mention this because I understand there may be some misunderstandings about her professional background." Now the silence changed. It became heavier. The women who had nodded along with Genevieve were looking at their laps. Paulette's performative disappointment had melted into something closer to nausea. And Corbin Corbin looked like a man watching his own house burn down and realizing he was the one who lit the match. Dr. Ambrose continued, "One more thing, Tamsin. I had a call this morning from the USDA. Your patent on the LB7 lactobacillus strain has been approved for commercial licensing. They're projecting initial contracts in the range of $2.4 million for the first year alone. Congratulations." I closed my eyes for a second. Not because of the money, because my father always used to say that the truth is patient. It doesn't rush. It doesn't shout. It just waits until the room is quiet enough to hear it. The room was very quiet now. "Thank you, Dr. Ambrose," I said. "I appreciate the call." "Of course. Take care of yourself, Tamsin. And that baby." I hung up, set the phone down on the gift table, right next to a silk-ribboned box from Genevieve that I hadn't opened yet. I looked at her. She was sitting now, though I hadn't seen her sit down. Her hands were folded in her lap, tight, white-knuckled. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "Genevieve," I said quietly, not angry, not loud, just clear. "You spent the last year telling anyone who would listen that I was nothing. A lab worker, a nobody, a woman who trapped your son." I paused. "But the woman you just described, that desperate, scheming, worthless woman, she doesn't exist. She never did. You invented her because you needed someone to look down on. And the reason you needed that," I softened my voice just slightly, "is because looking down is the only way you've ever felt tall." The room didn't move. Genevieve's eyes glistened, not with guilt, not yet, with the specific humiliation of being understood in front of people she had spent her whole life performing for. I turned to Corbin. He stepped forward, his mouth already forming words. "Tamsin, I'm so sorry. I didn't think she would." "You didn't think," I said. "That's the problem. You've never thought. You let her speak for you, decide for you, doubt for you, and tonight you stood in that doorway and let her call our child a lie." My voice didn't break. "I needed you to be the man I fell in love with at a fermentation workshop in Stowe, the one who laughed at lactobacillus jokes and remembered my coffee order. But that man would have stood in front of me, Corbin. And you didn't." He had no words. His arms dropped to his sides. Lucinda, the cousin by the window, stood up. She walked across the room, stopped in front of me, and said, "I'll drive you home." Simple. No speech, no drama, just a woman choosing the right side when it cost her something. I picked up my bag. I left the gifts on the table. I didn't take the cake, the decorations, or the cream-colored dress that photographed well. I walked to the door in the shoes I came in, with my hand on my stomach and my phone in my pocket. At the door, I stopped. Without turning around, I said, "You didn't just humiliate me today, Genevieve. You humiliated yourself. And the worst part is, you did it in front of the only 60 people whose opinion you've ever cared about." I walked out. Lucinda walked with me. The Vermont evening air hit my face. Cool, clean, smelling like pine and wet earth. I breathed it in like I had been holding my breath for an hour. I probably had been. Corbin called that night. I didn't answer. He texted at midnight. "Please let me explain." I turned my phone off and slept better than I had in months. He showed up at my apartment the next morning. I opened the door, but didn't let him in. "I'm not divorcing you today," I said. "But I need you to understand something. This marriage now has conditions. You will never let your mother speak about me or this child that way again. You will go to counseling. Alone first, then together. And if I ever see you stand in a doorway while someone attacks your family, I will walk through a different door. Permanently." He nodded. His eyes were red. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said. "Good," I said, "because the next time won't come with a second chance." Genevieve sent a letter 3 days later. Not an apology, a justification. I was only trying to protect my son. Mr. Pemberton, Corbin's family attorney, advised her to stop communicating with me entirely. She didn't listen, of course. She called twice. I let both go to voicemail. The second one was 40 seconds of silence followed by a single sentence. "I made a mistake." She hung up before I could have responded, even if I wanted to. I didn't call back. Not because I'm heartless, but because some mistakes need to sit with the person who made them before forgiveness can mean anything. Lucinda became one of my closest friends. She's the godmother now. She told me later that she almost didn't come to the shower, that something about the way Genevieve organized it felt off. It was too perfect, she said, like a stage. She was right. The USDA contract went through 6 weeks later. $2.4 million in the first year for commercial licensing of the LB7 strain. TerraFlora Labs gave me a promotion and a 12% equity stake. My name is now on 3 patents. The woman Genevieve called a lab worker is the reason half the high-end creameries in New England are producing award-winning cheese, including, ironically, 2 of Ainsley Dairy's biggest competitors. My daughter was born on a Tuesday morning in March, 6 pounds, 11 ounces. She has Corbin's eyes and my stubbornness. I named her Marguerite, after a French bacteriologist who pioneered lactic acid research in the 1920s. Corbin didn't know the reference. He just said, "It's beautiful." And it is. Genevieve has met her granddaughter once. Briefly. Supervised. She held Marguerite for 4 minutes and cried the entire time. I don't know if those tears were real, or performed, or somewhere in between. But I let her hold the baby anyway. Because my daughter deserves the chance to be loved by everyone in her family. Even the ones who almost ruined it before she arrived. People ask me if I've forgiven Genevieve, and the honest answer is, I'm working on it. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a fermentation. It takes time, the right conditions, and patience. You can't rush it. You can't fake it. And if you try to force it before it's ready, it turns bitter. But I'll tell you what I do know. That woman stood up in front of 60 people and called my baby a lie. And the truth called back. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't need a stage or an audience or a silk-ribboned baby shower. It just needs one moment of silence long enough for everyone to hear it. And when it speaks, it doesn't whisper.